I think I'm live. Let me see if my sound cue comes through. And it does. Fantastic. Now all I need is chat. Let's be able to see what's happening here. All right. Let me do a little hi, gang. All right. And beep. Let me take that off. Let me check this out. No. It looks like that works. Fantastic. All right, so I'm going to kill this because it's using up a ton of processing. Plus, I don't want to show you my passkey for my my live feeds accidentally. I can just see the future on that one. All right, so it's safe to erase. Is that how you say it? Erase that and pull up this here. What do we have going on here? Well, let me introduce this. Hi, gang. I'm Mr. Ed, and I'm an artist. If you're new to the channel, if you're new to me, because I know this is a little bit different than what I'm doing, so there may be some people who've just never even seen or know about me at all. Well, I'm a multimedia artist and sculptor. I do a wide range of mediums. If you check out my channel, you'll see I started my channel doing whiteboard landscape sketches. I started those last summer, just right out of the box. Never really did. I might have doodled a little bit on a dry erase board, but I never tried to do anything seriously impressive. Well, then I started to, and then as I was practicing, I would erase that art and start over on a new one and try to do it better. And then they were getting better and better, and then every time I erased them, I felt horrible. And I thought, oh, well, wouldn't it? Let's share the misery. So I thought I would make videos, and at the end I would erase them and shock everyone with it. And it is kind of shocking, and I've reached the point now where I just cannot erase them. It's just too hard for me to do. So I've kind of slowed down on those. So to keep my channel interesting and to keep producing art as promised, I've been doing some pencil and ink sketches. I do some strange kind of multimedia with watercolor and transparencies. I do wire sculptures. I make fairy houses. Just a ton of stuff. Well, to add to my list, I do art in computer programming, and I'm now learning P3, and I'm learning it through Daniel Stiffman. He has a channel on YouTube called The Coding Train, and it's such a valuable resource. He teaches. I think he's an instructor, so he makes money sharing his knowledge with students, and he does that for free on YouTube. So instead of paying to go to his class and learning this, he's offering this for free, and I just think that's amazing. So definitely try to take advantage of that if you're at all interested. I learned quite a bit. I was able to start programming in P3, doing some little things here and there, and of course my understanding of it is still kind of wonky, because I'm used to old school basics where you make everything yourself. You are basically reinventing the wheel every time you program. And in Java, which P3 is based on, all those tools are there already. You just have to know how to access them, what their keywords are, how to put them in the program, and then how to plug into the variables that are available for each one of those. And that's still kind of crazy for me to understand. I thought I turned all that down. Let's just turn everything down. Just turn everything down. I got people messaging me all over the place now. Let's see. I'm sorry. It's taking a second. I've got people concerned for me. Kind of been having a little bit of a bad life, but that happens to all of us. Anyway, back to this. So I'm going to pull up the program that this. Back to what I do, writing programs to do art on the computer. And I've been doing this since I was a young teenager, since around 1983, 84, I think was when I got my computer, and I was just a teenager then. And the school that I went to wasn't very advanced. Its computer department wasn't very advanced. And by the time I was really able to take high school level computer classes at our school, I pretty much had taught myself everything that they could teach me, which really wasn't a whole lot. I mean, it's not bragging on myself. I'm actually kind of diminishing the value of the education I got as far as instruction from an actual real computer department, and not just one that was kind of slapped together, which I felt like ours was. And I was barely able to hold my own against my peers from other schools that had more advanced computer departments. Like, they were learning things officially, like sorting and stuff like that. I was still trying to figure out how to do sorts and on my own, and I found it to be really, really confusing. And if I'd had an instructor there to be like, oh, this is how you do a sort, my life would have been a lot easier in that way. But anyway, that's enough about education during the 80s. I did manage to figure out how to program on my own, and one of the things that I liked the most about it was the graphics and being able to draw and paint and make the computer do that like a robot. So I just have been doing those for a while, and that's my expertise in computer programming. It's not very advanced. I'm not making apps on phones or anything like that. Maybe if I set my mind to it, I probably could. But I just do it as a hobby. Oh, let me see where I'm at here. I didn't want to shut that down. Okay. There we go. Dash that out. So let me switch over here to the window I need to look at. Are we looking at it? I think so. I don't know why that looks like that. Oh, you know what? I didn't change my... That's why. That probably looks really weird. What a disaster this live feed's turned out to be. It's just kind of an impromptu thing. I wanted to show people this. So don't expect a lot from this video is all I'm saying. Where am I at here? All right, let's look at this program, if I can. Take that off there, put this... There we go. Is that showing up right? Maybe. Skip to the end here. Okay, I think it is. So in the screen, I'm so distracted, I don't even understand why. All right. Let me start here. Let's look at the program first. This is a program, I think it has like 10 points, and they're moving around the screen, as you can see, and they're moving based on kind of a clever way to move. There's different ways that you can move a point on a screen. You can pick a direction and just add to that direction a step amount, and you can have that be very boxy, and I didn't want mine to be boxy. I wanted it to look like more organic. So there's switches and directions, and it's not 45-degree angles and 90-degree angles. You got some really nice vectors is basically what I'm trying to do. I'm using I think it's Cartesian coordinates and polar vector conversions to get these things to look like they're moving around like bugs, basically. And I can show you kind of how I did that here in the program, and I'll break it down for you. This is actually a dimensioned array of 10 particles, and the particles are going through the main engine one at a time, assigned here by the p equals p plus 1. Let me see, this right here it's using up energy, so it's going to take away 1 unit of movement energy away from its total amount of energy available for movement right there. And if it's drops below 0, if it runs out of energy, basically it assigns a new set of vectors. So it will select a random polarity, a negative or a positive number, and then it'll multiply that 1 or negative 1 times a real number. So, and then it starts over. It basically changes directions, and you can kind of see that happening here as it reaches the end of its movement vector. It selects a new vector and it changes, usually pretty dramatically. It could be as much as in the complete opposite direction, or it can be slightly so that it looks like it's kind of curved, and that's dependent upon a couple of variables in particular. One is the maximum distance it's going to move until its energy is depleted. So basically that's just the total energy available. The value of the total energy available determines that. And then once it gets to the end of that, once it's used it all up, it's going to select a new set of vectors. So it could be a maximum distance of whatever that number is. I think in this program, the maximum distance, let me see, does it just run on its own? Yes. Okay, so I have a default value here, and let me see if I can find it. Main program, set initial values. Okay, right here. I have to scroll over, switch between screens so you guys can see what's happening. It's just too much to keep track of for my brain. I can write this program, but I can't tell which window I have to click on to show you guys what there needs to be. I mean, could there be any more disparity in productivity? All right. So the size, this SZ variable right here, is pretty much the scale, and here it's set to 10, so it's going to be a number. Oh no, to 30. Okay, so it's picking a random number between 0 between 0 and 2, and then I'm adding 1 to that, so it's actually between 1 and 3, because I don't want to work with zeros, so I always add 1. So I'm working with 1 to 3. I do that. I always have. I've seen cleaner programmers just operate with that 1, with that 0 there, because it's always the bottom value, so they never have to adjust or worry about that adjustment, because you have to have that consistently adjusted throughout your program, or it's going to throw things off. So if you leave the adjustment out and just work from 0 to whatever number, then you never have to worry about it. And cleaner programmers do. But this was the way I learned. I taught myself to do programming, was working from like 1 to whatever, and using 0 as kind of a flag in the programming is kind of how, I don't know if that makes any sense to anybody. Let's see, I'm probably going to get a ton of thumbs downs for this. If you catch stuff from this, if you figure things out, great, I'm glad. I'm not a computer instructor, but I did want to kind of offer this, so if people want to see what's going on here. So the MZ value here is the minimum value, and it is a factor of this value here. So let's say your maximum step that you'll go before selecting a new vector might be 20, and then the minimum value is a factor of that, so it might be 5 or 4 or 10, something like that. And I think in this case it's 10, and since my multiplier here for my scale is 10, then I used my minimum value, and it's just divided. So I'm basically taking it down to that 1, 2, 3 value. I don't know if that makes any sense. And then in this line here, because they have tails, I'm basically shifting the current point that's been printed. When it gets to the end of the engine, it's going to shift that current point to a point that's labeled sub 2 or sub 1, and then another one that's sub 2 and sub 3 and sub 4, going all the way to 9. It's going to shift that value all the way to the end. And then once it gets to, I think, 8, it's going to erase 8 and 9, the line that's drawn between point 8 in that subarray and point 9 in that subarray is going to get erased. So it just produces this tail behind it. I don't know if that makes any sense. Let's see. Setting the initial variable. So I have to tell the computer that each point has assigned to it an initial direction it's going to go and an initial speed it's going to travel. and how far it's going to go until it checks new vectors. And I also have to, I think there's another variable I put in here. Oh, I think there's color variables that are, no, not on this one. Not on this one. Okay, skip that. So then when you get down to the main program, you have your points. They all have all their initial conditions have been set, and all you need to do is just cycle through the next set of conditions, cycle to the next set of conditions, and then handle those and just keep doing that forever, basically. And that's what this part does. So it's cycling through each point here, and then when it gets to the end of those points, which I think it's 1 through 9 here, so it's actually 9 particles. And once it gets greater than 9, so it looks for it's on the 10th particle. There's no 10th particle there. It says, you know what, we're going to go back to the beginning. It's particle number 1 we're on now. And so then it looks at that single particle, which is defined in this array here, this P subscript, and it's going to subtract the movement subscript value. And if its energy is depleted, if it falls below 0, then it's going to select its vectors again, and then it's going to test to see if it's moved outside of the boundary, and if it has, it's going to have its movement outside of the boundary canceled. So it's basically its position is going to be reset to the edge of the screen at that whatever those points are. And then it's going to print, and the first thing it prints is what is this value? Oh, okay. This is going to print the first line, I think. The from point 1 to point 2, it's going to draw a line, and that line is going to stay there until its values get shifted all the way through the end of the subarray, and then it's going to get erased right here in this line. So the very last line between point 8 and point 9 are being erased each cycle, and then they're being shifted. So let me see if I can stop this. All right, so whiteboard, and so switch, shut that off. Okay. All right, so this point right from this section of the line is being printed. This right here it's not even being touched by the program until its values are set at the end, in which case it's erased. So I'm really, the only graphic function that's occurring is erasing the end and drawing the front, and then everything in between just stays there until it's dealt with. I don't know if that makes sense. So you don't have to draw, you basically don't have to draw each section of the line. You don't have to go from point 1 to point 2, draw a line, point 2 to point 3, draw a line, point 3 to point, I don't have to do that. That's a waste of time. All I have to do is just print that first point 1 to point 2, draw that line, and then erase the line at the end of however long it is. You could subscript that array and have the line be 100 bits long if you want, or 100 segments long, which I might do that. I might do that later. I'll show it in a later video. So let's start this program, or no, let's go through this program a little bit further, because there's a couple more things I want to show my viewers or anybody who's watching. I'm not sure. Okay, when the energy is depleted, because I don't want to affect every one of the points whenever a single point's energy is depleted, so I have to drop out of that array. I have to drop out of that engine, assign that individual point its new values, and then go back into the engine and then continue, is what I do in this section of code right here. And then this section of code, again, it does the same thing. It jumps out, adjusts the polarity, and then jumps back into the program. And that's when a particle is at the end of its energy. It has to change directions. One of the ways you do that is just have a random 1 or -1, and multiply that times a value, and that'll give you a movement one way or the other. If it's times 1, it's a positive movement. If it's -1, it's a negative movement, of course. You know, It should make sense, I guess. I probably didn't do the best of explaining it. Okay, so that's that program, and if we run it here, all of the values that are running in this are the default values are fixed. There's no lines in here that let you adjust anything, the user adjustments. But I have a program, and I'll load it here. Alright, and let's run that. I'm going to switch you over so you can see what's happening. Now I call this Crystal Maker because the what's it called? The artifacts that are left behind whenever it moves creates this really neat geometry and pattern that I think is kind of cool to watch. So let's run that. So I can set the values, the initial values, or I can have default values, and I'm going to set the initial conditions. And I'm going to have its movements. Now the maximum distance per round, that's how far it will go until its energy is depleted. If that value is 20, it's going to go further. If its value is 10, it's going to go shorter. And that's also dependent upon how many chunks of its energy it's taking away each time it cycles or each time it takes a step. So in this case, I'm going to put when it selects its random number, it's going to be up to 20. So it could be 19, 18, all the way down to this minimum, the maximum consumption rate. This is the maximum number of units that will be taken away each cycle every time it has to take a step toward the end of its plotted path. And if you have it as a factor of the distance that it's moving, then it helps the points do what I'll explain here in just a moment. And they can, when the initial conditions can be set to random, or the initial conditions can be set to every points in the center. And I'm going to have the initial conditions be random for all the points. And I'm going to leave the trail off for now, but I have the option of turning the trail on so that it won't erase itself. That last segment I explained earlier, that part is skipped over. And I can set the number of points, and I like the number 7, and it's also a good number because it doesn't weight the program down too much, and it also gives you enough points where you can really see something interesting going on. So in this program, it's kind of like the last one, except for there's only one point here that's free to move around. The other points chase it. Wherever it's at, it's following it. And consequently, those other points, their movements will appear to be more angular. They're 45-degree angles, 90-degree angles, when you compare its last vector with its current vector. The dot that's able to move around freely, that one has a bit more of an organic feel to its movements, and if you look at it, you can kind of see, you can pick out the dot that's able to move around versus the ones that are following it. When they catch up to it, when one of those 6 chasing dots catch up to the free mover, its location is reassigned randomly to one of the corners or the center, and then it will go about its job of chasing the free moving dot. So that creates this kind of like the streaks that you see are coming from that point. That's kind of weird. I thought it was going to, it looks like they're starting in, I think I know what I did there. A little bit of a bug. I wouldn't call it a bug per se, it's just that the output isn't refined as I like, so I have to make some adjustments, but it still looks cool because the goal of this is to get the computer to make some art and then give it a set of rules by which it's going to affect that art, and then iterate those rules over and over again until you see what happens. So I'm going to stop this and I'm going to run it again. Oh, also I wanted to say when its position is reset, its color shifts to the next color in line, and then when it gets to the end of the color list, it starts over again, and that's independent for each point. So that's why you get some lines that are orange, some that are blue, some that are green, and then those will switch to purple or whatever. Okay, so I'm going to start again. The random number generator in this, the modulus, I haven't changed it. So that seed, pretty much the random numbers are always going to be the same. So the pattern will be the same as long as the initial conditions are the same. Enter the max distance. Let's do 20 again, and let's do a factor of that. Let's do the random spawn again, like we did last time, but let's turn the trail on and see what patterns emerge. And we're going to use seven dots altogether. There's 1 free mover and 6 chasers. And this is the artwork that evolves from this computer code. And I'm just going to let it run a little bit, let you guys check it out and see what it looks like. If you're interested in this code, I'll try to remember to drop it down in the description to this video, but I'm not sure if all of it will go because there are a lot of characters in there that the text box entry window may kick out. They'll just omit them. Anyway, that's how it goes. Now each point, whenever it draws the lines here, the chasers are, there's a line that's drawn between the chasing point and the free moving point, and that's the same for all of the chasing points. So for the free mover, there will be a number of lines attached to it that correspond to each point in that array, and it creates this kind of lattice. And then when they catch up, when the chasers catch up with the free moving one, its location is reassigned randomly to one of the corners or the center. It's supposed to be. I don't think it is in this program. I think it's just changing one of those coordinates, either an X or a Y, so that it doesn't appear in the corner. It'll just appear on the wall. So that one way that you can debug is kind of see what's happening. You look at it and be like, oh, it seems to be missing a coordinate there. Sometimes you can get it that way, just studying what's going on. There are a couple of other things that I need to change in here that I noticed only in the code. I didn't notice them in the output. That's because they're really subtle, and I don't know what to expect from the output. So it's one of those things, in that case, I may not see it. So let's change some of the variables here and see what happens. I'm going to make the step the minimum distance per round, or how far it'll go until its vector changes. I'm going to change that to a very low number, 6. And then I'm going to change the maximum consumption rate to 2. So it's only going to move 1 point or 2 points every cycle. That's randomly determined. And it's going to have a maximum of 6 points that it will travel. So there's a pretty narrow gap between its maximum distance per round and its maximum consumption rate, and that can account for a different style of output. And let's see how it looks. And I'm going to turn the trails on because I want to see what this output looks like. I'm going to use 7 points. Now you can see right off the bat it's moving a little bit slower. It's not flying around the screen like it is with the larger gap between those initial variables that we set. And I can't tell, but it seems like the points are catching up to the chasing points are catching up to the free moving point. I don't even know how to say it. More times per a given period. Is that it? Like there's more occurrences in, say, 10 seconds of it catching itself than if there was a wider gap. There might be just one occurrence of it catching itself in a minute. I think that's what I'm trying to say. I don't know why that was so hard. I'm looking at the output on my phone, and I have to tell you, in Tiny, where you can't see the aliasing, the pixelization as well, it really looks cool. That's some crazy looking art there. If someone had said they painted that, I'd been like, wow, good job. Nice job, computer. All right. Is this kind of analogous to handing an elephant a paintbrush and then it paints something? Sort of. It is sort of like that. Or, putting some shoes on a pig and having it run through some paint and then having it squeal around on a canvas and calling that art. I mean, it's art. It's the result of this function, whatever it is. It could be deliberate from your brain, or it could just be the operation of some object, be it a person or an animal or sound, whatever it is. A jet engine blowing paint onto a canvas. Is the jet engine a genius painter? No. It's just a function. It's like a tool function in the output, I guess, is what this kind of demonstrates. So maximum distance per round, let's use a much larger variable here and then use a smaller stepping variable, and let's see what happens. Let's random spawn, and I'm going to turn the trails off because I want to be able to see how these points move compared to the follower, or the free moving one. Did I not shut that off? Let me try this again. 1 set 35 to 0 off and 7. There we go. I must have hit 1 accidentally. Now see how the followers are really, it kind of looks like a small fish chasing a really fast fish or something. So that is a clear demonstration of how the gap between the consumption rate and its amount of energy can affect the number of times that its locations will respawn, because it's harder for those points to catch up. They basically have to corner it along the border, which they might run into it along the border. And if that instance of them catching up to it is going to occur on the border, then you're going to have this floral looking eruption of lines that are going to seem to come from mainly a point on one of the walls. So let's use those same variables and turn the trails on and see if we can predict that output. And use 35, right, and 2, and we spawned in the center, and I'm turning the tails on, and we had 7 points. And it's going to generate the same random numbers, so we should see the same instances of it catching up on the border that we saw before. That's a good thing about not changing your random seed generator, the modulus value, because you can test a random conditions with the same random set of variables without having to enter in those random variables into a data set. There's also a disadvantage, because if you want some real random numbers, then you have to have a way of generating a seed for your modulus that's random, that's truly random. And I usually use the user. As the user waits to press a key, I cycle through a random number, and then when they press the key, I select that random number for my seed, and then that gives me a good random. But every once in a while, like if I press the space bar right off the bat, I don't give the program enough time to cycle through, I can hit the same seed value and get the same random numbers, even though the user generated the value by waiting. So you can use a timestamp to generate a random seed value. That works really well. If you have a clock, if you're able to access a clock on your machine, I think P3 will let you do that. But they have other ways of generating numbers in P3. In Applesoft, you had to do it the old-fashioned way. So you can tell this output is a lot different than the ones before. After letting it run for a little bit, you can see that the points do primarily catch up with it on the border, and it's because basically as the free mover is moving around, he runs into them, and they just happen to be in proximity. So I kind of like how that output is those conditions. That's kind of a strange attractor, because it's the specific detail of initial conditions can affect how the output is generated. So let's try a little bit smaller scale. So let's try 10 and 2 and 0, and let's turn the trails on. Do you want to see them with them on? And let's try 7 points again. If I try to go up any higher in points, like 10 or 20 points, it really slows the machine down and it takes it a while to cycle through, so it's not as pretty to look at. But if you let it run over time and then check back, you can see what art has been generated. So I like kind of the now the reason why I had it I was going to say I like the little narrow curvy things, but you don't get to see those because they get covered up by these big swaths whenever it's reset, its position is reset. Well, one of the reasons why I had its position reset is because you'll run into this thing where there are it's almost on top of it all the time, so you don't get any really nice differentiation in the patterns. They all just kind of get smudged and run together. It just looks like a crayon box blew up, and I really didn't like that, so I made it so that it would create the more interesting patterns at the expense of that. And I only have I have my color list here. There are 7 colors, or 8 colors. 0 through 7 are the values, and for value there are 2 whites and 2 blacks, and I'm not even sure why there are. I'm sure there's a good reason. It's not like on the older computers where you have high intensity colors and low intensity colors. On the Applesoft, it actually generated an RF signal to affect its graphics. It did it in a way that made the hardware easier to create and cheaper, but its graphics sucked. It really sucked compared to any other computer at the time, like an Amiga or even a Commodore 64. Applesoft BASIC graphics sucked as far as color goes. Now, if you used a monochrome, they were great. You could get it to do grayscale really nicely, but colors, it just sucks. You don't even get the artifacts in this demonstration because it's an emulator. But if you were viewing this on a TV screen run off of an actual Apple computer, there'd be all kinds of artifacts where some of the colors will not border one another because of how they're turned on and off and how those values are retained in memory, because you're only dealing with 8 bits of memory for each point, and it doesn't really give you the freedom to have as much information. So the expense, the trade-off is crisp, nice edges of colors that can run against one another. There are some videos on YouTube that talk about this, like the old 8-bit graphics and some of the problems that there were with it. And it talks about this specifically, and I think some of those challenges will go all the way up into 16-bit until they start. Once you get up into 32, 64-bit computers, you don't have to worry about it anymore. You can have a lot of values associated, well, pretty much enough values associated with each point that you can get any color and they all line up. They can all set next to one another. And the screens do it well too. Anyway, that's kind of a side thing. But you can see how this art is turned out, and this is just kind of a little bit of a demonstration of what I've been able to do with computer code and how I've been able to get it to create art for me. And I feel like it's a collaboration between me and this machine, using logic, using its mechanics to affect this beautiful output. And I'm going to continue to do some of these programs. If you're interested, I'll post a link to this website. It actually will run Applesoft BASIC in JavaScript right in your browser, so you don't have to download anything, and most of the functionality is there. If you want some more advanced functionality, you'll have to get like a real emulator, which can be kind of hard to find and can be kind of a pain to get to run. So that's why I like this. I'll give up some of that higher functionality just to have something that's really easy to use right inside the browser. So I'll post a link to that. That's Applesoft BASIC in JavaScript by Joshua Bell, and you can find that on the web. And I'll also post, if I can, a copy of the code for this last program that you see there. And if I can leave it in a comment, I will too. I don't know what I'm limited to on what I can enter into the descriptions and comments as far as characters, and also the number of characters, because I think there's like limits on some things. Anyway, we'll find out. And you can also find videos like this on my Facebook. So click on my banner, or go to my channel, click on my Facebook, and check out some of my live feeds there. I do a lot of live feeds on Facebook that are kind of interesting and art related, and some of them are computer programming as well. So thank you so much for stopping by. I really appreciate you guys hanging out with me for a minute. If you're checking this out live, if you're checking this out later, thanks. I really appreciate the visit. And if you like these videos, please think about subscribing. I post a wide variety of art, and I'm sure you'll find something that you really enjoy, like computer art, or dry erase, or sketches, or sculptures, or pretty much anything. The world of art is where I live. So until next time, you guys, I appreciate it, and you take care.